We need to limit spending. The Fed is going to raise rates. These phrases have become a dog whistle indicating one thing: inflation. The economy ebbs and flows, usually unpredictably. This can affect the overall price of goods and services. Sometimes prices become inflated. But what exactly does that mean?
Inflation is something that people ignored for years, but when the early 2020s happened, we saw inflation start to really pound up, rocket up. And so inflation just means you get a lot less stuff for a lot more money. That's not a good equation. And so we're in this higher interest rate environment. Interest rates go up when you borrow, but when you buy too, but when you invest. So you can get better interest rates now at a CD than you ever would have got 10 years ago. My grandmother back in the day, in the 1980s, the 70s and 80s, she was living off the interest she had in CDs. She was getting like 13% interest. So her principal, she had a couple $100,000 in a CD. She was getting like $26,000 a year. And she wasn't touching the principal. Those days could be coming back. So the positive of this inflationary environment is that if you are a saver, you're going to get a lot more money and you're not going to have to take a lot of risk. See, what happened in the last 15 years when we had low inflation is we had low interest rates. Low to the point where under 1% was what you were getting, and it was impossible to live on that. So my grandmother, if she would have been alive these days, would have had to take her money out of the CD and then put it into the stock market, taking a lot more risk to try to get a better return. Now people are going to start taking money out of the market and putting it back into CDs. So there's some silver linings to this high inflationary environment. If you don't have money to save, it's all bad because things are getting a lot more expensive. Interest rates on a house, interest rates on a car, credit cards, food, eggs. Never thought eggs would be as expensive as they were, right? So gas, all these things add up to negative savings because it's costing you more money to get what you used to get. So again, taking advantage of the interest rate environment, if you have money, getting it into a place where you have a lot less risk and a lot better return, CDs or different investments. Paring down your risk in the stock market should always be happening anyway. If we're over 50 years old, why are we having all our money at risk still? We built up a nice balance. Do we want that balance to disappear right when we need it the most? No, we want to lock that balance in. Back in the World War I, when troops would advance, they would dig trenches. They would advance and protect. They'd advance themselves and protect. We take that same philosophy in the money world. We advance your money and we protect it. You never go backwards. That's the most important part of a retirement plan.
Talking heads on the news love to discuss inflation and its effects. But how exactly do we know when we're in an inflationary environment?
So inflation is kind of hard to understand for a lot of people because the government comes out with these different reports and studies. One is called the CPI. That's the Consumer Price Index. The other one is called the PPI. That's the Producer Price Index. Now, the one that means the most to me is the PPI. If it's costing companies more to produce what they're producing, it's going to have an increase, obviously, and then it's going to have an increase in the CPI because it's going to cost you more to buy it if it's costing them more to make it. So it's really easy to understand. They don't do a good job of explaining it. But if it's costing more money to make something, it's going to cost you more money to buy something. So you know it's a lagging, we've heard this term lagging indicator. The CPI is a lagging indicator to the PPI because by the time they produce it, then they have to put it on their ships. So from China, it takes you a month to come over here, and it costs you more money. So in the time it took for them to release the PPI number saying it's costing us more money to make, you've got about 3 or 4 weeks to the CPI number goes up where the costs start being effective. So that's why they call that a lagging indicator. Both of those numbers are important. To me, the PPI is more important than the CPI.
Typically, when inflation arises, there isn't much that the average consumer can do to combat it. That's when the government can step in.
The way government tries to combat inflation causes more inflation a lot of times. They start raising interest rates. And raising interest rates can create different problems. The problem with government is they press buttons, but they don't know what's going to happen after they press that button. Good thing they don't have the nuclear code sometimes, because we need to know the cause and effect. If I raise rates here, it's going to hurt John and Sally over here. What if they want to buy a house? Well, now the house that they could have got at 2.9% interest rate is 7% now. They're going to get a lot less house for a lot more money.
And now the big question: how will inflation affect my retirement savings? And more importantly, how can I bolster my retirement portfolio against inflation?
The problem with inflation is it basically costs you more for everything you thought was going to cost less. So if you built a retirement plan up and you were basing it on an inflation rate of, let's say, 1 or 2%, and now we have inflation of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, whatever it is, it's going to cost you a whole lot more money. So it's going to dig into your retirement savings if you don't have a cushion. That's why we always build our retirement income plans with a cushion. It means extra money just in case things like this happen. Inflation's not always going to be here, but it's not going to be like it was for 15 years at zero either.
The market and the economy may feel like a roller coaster ride at times, but it doesn't have to. Creating a retirement plan with inflation protection built in will be an incredible relief. That's why it's so important to work with a team that can help put together a plan. Coach Pete and the certified fiduciary team at Capital Financial can help you navigate the financial world and get you where you want to be in retirement. Take advantage of the no-cost, no-obligation financial review to understand the ins and outs of your retirement plan. Contact us today. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more retirement help.